Uses of Yaish and Ain. We'll take a little break now from pronominal suffixes and look at a few other things. These two words, Yaish and Ain, are what they call particles. Now, one of my pet peeves with some grammar books is that they'll sometimes use a grammatical term and not define it. I had to hunt around a little bit for this definition, but this comes from Webster's Dictionary, and it says that a particle is a unit of speech expressing some general aspect of meaning or some connective or limiting relation, and including the articles, most prepositions and conjunctions, and some interjections and adverbs. Now, a couple things I want to say about this. One is that it seems to be a fairly general category. It even states that it's expressing some general aspect of meaning, some connective or limiting relation, so it's fairly general. It's also inclusive of some other categories that we've already encountered. So articles are also particles, most prepositions and conjunctions are particles, and some interjections and adverbs. So sometimes you'll see a word defined in a glossary or a vocabulary list as a particle. Sometimes you'll see it elsewhere as a preposition or something like that. So just be aware that particle is a larger category, fairly general. I'm not sure how it's used linguistically. It probably has a more precise definition, but in terms of general grammars, it seems to be a fairly general category. Okay, so particles. That's just to introduce you to what particles are. Let's look at these two words. Yaish. Yaish means there is or there are. It is a statement of existence, really. And Ain is the opposite. It's the negative form. Ain means there is not or there are not. There's another form for this. It's the diphthong, ayin. Oops. So we have Yaish, or we have Ain or ayin. This is the negative one. Let's look at a couple examples. So we have Yaish bayit. This means there is a house. So it's a statement of existence. There exists a house. There is a house. Conversely, Ain ish. There is no man. So this is the negative form. There is not, or there is no. Now I said there's two forms of Ain. I mentioned that one is the diphthong. The diphthong has the stress, if you remember, ayin, and if the stress is removed, then it contracts to Ain, just like we had before. Bayit goes to bait, just like ayin goes to Ain. So sometimes you'll see Ain, sometimes you'll see ayin. Now don't confuse this ayin with this ayin. This one is the aleph and means there is not or there are not, and this one means I or well or spring. The only difference is this first letter, right? They both have diphthongs. They both end the same. It's just this right here. One way to remember this, I think we introduced you to lo already, or I mentioned it. I think it is. Lo means not. It has the aleph, and this is the negative of the statement of existence. Yaish is the positive. Ayin is the negative. So remember, aleph here is the negative, similar to the negation aleph here. The other thing is, I think, I could be wrong on this, I think ayin, the symbol, originally came from eye, like the eye in the eyes we used to see, something like that. I could be wrong on that. But if that's correct, then that would be this is the actual word ayin, so it has the letter in it, ayin. Anyway, just don't confuse those two. Let's see, what's the next thing? Oh yes, let's look at an example. This is an example that uses the diphthong form, ayin. V'adam ayin la'avod et ha'adama. So it's an example that uses ayin, but the other thing I really want to talk about here is that ayin or ain and Yaish have no tense as part of the word itself. The tense comes from the context. The two examples I gave you before, there is a house, there is no man, I translate as a present tense, but that would have to come from context. And this is an example using the past tense. There was no man to work. You'll just have to trust me on this here. This means to work. We haven't taken this verb form yet. To work the ground. There was no man to work the ground. This comes from Genesis, obviously. And so here's an example of IN being used in context, being translated because of the context as a past tense. There was not. There were not. In this case, was, because it's singular. The other thing is there is no number embedded there. Sometimes it's is or are. In this case, it is not or were not, but it could also be are not if this was plural. If this were men or something, anashim, there were no men. So there is no number, there's no gender, there's no case, there's no what was the first one I talked about? Gender, number, case, tense. There's no tense. All that has to come from context. So it's morphologically fairly simple. The word stays the same. Okay, what do we have next here? Possession. There is another way, another use of Yaish and Ein, and that is to mark possession. Now we've seen two ways so far that we can talk about possession. The first is the construct. So we have Beit HaMelech, the house of the king. Remember, this is the genitive or the absolute, and one of the possible genitives, I gave you 6 before, is possession. So the king's house would be a good way to translate this. Remember also that when we talked about the construct, we said that the definite status of the construct follows the absolute. So if this is definite, and it is here because of the article the or ha, then this has to be definite. So we said if you want to have a relationship that shows possession where one is indefinite and the other is definite, you have to use the preposition. I mentioned this in a previous module when I was talking about construct. And the example I gave was this. Bein lamelech. This means a son of the king. You could not say this in a construct relationship. It would have to be the son of the king or a son of a king, but you could not have them different. Could have different definite status with the construct. So construct is one way to do possession, express possession. Another is to use the preposition le. Now the third way, which is really related to this, is to use ein or Yaish with le. So it's really very similar to this. And an example of that is this. Yaish li bayit. Literally, it means there is to me a house. But you would translate this, I have a house. A couple of things to note. One is that instead of this meaning there is, it means, or instead of this meaning using the verb to be, like is or was, we translate it with a verb to have. Okay. It's supposed to be an A there. Let me redo that. To have. I have a house. Not I am a house. Okay. So when Yaish or Ein is used with le, then its meaning is not to be but to have. The second thing to note is that the pronominal suffix at the end of le, right here, is the subject. So there is to me a house. I have. The I, the subject here, is expressed by this suffix ending. But really, if you just say it, there is to me a house, it's fairly obvious what's going on. Of course, we don't say it like that in English. We say I have a house. So it's really not too difficult. Another example or counterexample, ein lo bayit. There is not to him a house. He does not have a house. Okay? That makes sense? I have a house. There is to me a house. He does not have a house. O here is the 3ms suffix, so him. He does not have a house. So the subject is expressed here, and it's negative, and it's to have as opposed to be. think I have one more example. Yes. Yaish lamelech giborim. This is the last one. There is to the king giborim, which are warriors. So there is to the king warriors, or the king has warriors. So use the verb to have, and again, the subject is the bit that's attached to the l. So the king is the subject. The king has warriors. Okay, so yesh and ein, they are particles. They're particles of existence, I suppose you could call them, used to state something exists, yesh, or something does not exist, ein. And with l, they can be used to indicate possession.